I mean, in the wet around here, it's always very tricky. Also, we have to wait and see how much rain is going to fall. So ideally, of course, I would like to at least be P3. Fighting the McLarens will be very hard, but yeah, anything can happen.
Good luck tomorrow. Potentially.
I would have liked to start third. I mean, that was probably our position today, but in Q3 it just didn't come together.
Can you imagine Verstappen being frustrated with his own car in the middle of a title fight? What happened at Spa left many speechless. "I couldn't push," said Max, "and that changes everything." Before we continue, tell me in the comments, do you think Red Bull is losing its way in this championship? Why is Verstappen so uncomfortable with his car just when he needs it most? In this video, we're going to analyze Max Verstappen's most forceful statement so far this season, right after qualifying for the 2025 Belgian GP. We'll also review the improvements Red Bull brought and why they might not be working. To understand the true weight of what happened in qualifying for the Belgian GP, we first have to consider the type of circuit that Spa-Francorchamps is. This track is unforgiving. It has fast corners, dramatic elevation changes, and areas where the driver needs maximum confidence in the car to attack every inch of the asphalt. Any imbalance, any disconnect between driver and machine, translates into lost tenths of a second that make the difference between starting on the front row or being trapped in the middle of the pack. Red Bull arrived in Belgium with a clear objective: regaining control of the championship. The previous weeks had been tense. McLaren had been showing upward form, with Oscar Piastri establishing himself as a real and constant threat. Red Bull, aware of the pressure, decided to bring an aggressive technical package. Aerodynamic changes, suspension tweaks, bodywork modifications. Everything aimed to improve the RB21's performance in this key part of the season. But what seemed like a strategic gamble became a source of frustration for Max Verstappen. During qualifying, Red Bull opted for a high downforce setup. In theory, this should have given the car more stability in fast corners like Pahon and Blanchiment, two critical points on the circuit. However, that strategy didn't yield the expected results. Verstappen put it bluntly: "I didn't have the right balance. I couldn't push." That statement, so direct, so laced with frustration, reflects more than just a technical issue. Furthermore, qualifying was made even more challenging by the limited preparation beforehand. This was a sprint weekend, meaning there was only one free practice session before jumping straight into qualifying. In that short time frame, Red Bull failed to find the right balance. And at a track like Spa, where testing time is minimal and the weather is unpredictable, every setup error is amplified. Within Red Bull, the atmosphere is not the same as in previous years. Although they continue to lead many technical aspects, the pressure to keep Verstappen motivated has become more intense than ever. And that pressure also creates friction. Helmut Marko has been blunt in his comments: if the improvements don't work, the championship could slip away. That statement, although directed at the entire team, also resonates as a direct message to Verstappen. The margin for error is getting smaller and smaller, and everyone knows it. After what happened in qualifying at Spa, the reaction within Red Bull was quick to be felt. The team, which has for years been accustomed to dominating or at least being a step ahead in technical development, was forced to publicly acknowledge that things aren't working as expected. And the most striking aspect wasn't just the technical response, but the tone with which each key member expressed themselves. Helmut Marko, one of the team's most influential figures, issued a blunt warning: if the improvement package from Spa and Budapest doesn't yield results, the championship could be considered lost. It's unusual to hear that level of candor in the middle of a season, and it speaks to the level of pressure building internally. As for Max Verstappen, his stance is equally significant. Although he has said that the team can always count on him and that his commitment is not in doubt, his words also reveal a frustration that is increasingly difficult to hide. He's not at Red Bull to fight for second or third places. His mentality is that of a champion, and when he notices the car isn't responding as it should, he has no qualms about making it clear. The most worrying thing for Red Bull isn't just the car's occasional performance, but the disconnect Max is beginning to show with the RB21. And the root of the problem isn't just what's seen on the track. Internally, Red Bull has entered a readjustment phase. With the new aerodynamic package and their sights already partially set on the 2026 car, some key engineers are dividing their efforts. This has created a certain lack of coordination between the improvements being implemented now and the response they expect from them in the short term. The situation becomes even more complex when we consider that the RB21, despite the updates, hasn't regained the sense of stability Max needs. The team has tried to compensate with different rear wing configurations, but the results have been inconsistent. In some sections of the track, the car responds well. In others, it inexplicably loses performance. And that on a track like Spa, with such diverse sectors, is severely penalizing. Every time Max enters a corner and doesn't feel he can push the limit, every time he hesitates to accelerate or brake a few meters later, it's a sign that the car isn't doing its part. Red Bull, of course, isn't sitting idly by. They've adjusted the simulation strategy, redoubled their efforts in the areas of suspension and cooling, and are trying to squeeze the most out of each free practice session to adapt the package to the different layouts. Amid this context, the role of Laurent Mekies, the new team principal, is beginning to take center stage. His communication with Verstappen has been constant, both on the radio and off-track. During the sprint, he was clearly heard praising him for his control of the car. It was a clear message, not only for Max, but for the team. There is still confidence, but we must respond with results. Pressure, therefore, is no longer a possibility, it's a daily reality at Red Bull. Every technical adjustment, every engineering meeting, every feedback from Verstappen carries extra weight. What happens in the coming weeks will be decisive for Red Bull, and especially for Max Verstappen. The pressure is not only within the team, but also on the calendar. With a technical break just around the corner and only a handful of races before the major resource reset for 2026, every session, every qualifying session, and every race will carry much more weight than usual. The room for maneuver has been reduced, and the moves made now will not only influence the current championship fight, but also how Verstappen makes decisions about his future in Formula One. In the short term, Red Bull plans to continue evaluating the upgrade package introduced at Spa. This package represents the last major evolution of the RB21 before the engineers begin to focus their energy on the car for the new regulations. That means that whatever isn't working now likely won't be fixed for the remainder of the season. The team has opted for a combination of increased downforce, cooling tweaks, and structural changes to the bodywork, but if these changes don't translate into solid performance in real-world race conditions, the season could definitely tip toward McLaren. The performance at Spa already left worrying signs. Verstappen couldn't find the desired balance, and the car showed serious shortcomings in the second and third sectors, where aerodynamic efficiency is key. If Red Bull can't address these shortcomings before reaching tracks like Zandvoort, Monza, or Suzuka, which demand different levels of downforce and speed, we could see a decline in overall performance that will affect not only Max's results, but also his relationship with the team's technical team. Furthermore, the weather will play a key role in what's coming. Spa was just a warning. Unpredictable weather, rain-interrupted sessions, mixed conditions, all of this favors teams with a clear foundation and a flexible structure. McLaren seems to be finding that balance, while Red Bull is still trying to figure out which setup yields the best results. If the weather becomes a variable factor again in the coming rounds, and the RB21 remains so sensitive to load changes, the championship could become unattainable. In this scenario, there's also significant room for strategic moves. Red Bull could be forced to change its approach if it sees results aren't improving. This could range from adjustments to its technical team to an internal restructuring of car development. Verstappen, for his part, will surely demand quick responses. He has shown that, when given the right car, he can dominate without question. But when that car doesn't allow him to compete the way he wants, his tolerance for frustration has a limit. The current situation isn't definitive, but it is critical. And it's precisely this phase of the season that usually sets the tone for the rest of the year. What happens in the next 2 or 3 races will determine whether Red Bull manages to sustain its position or finally gives into the pressure from McLaren. What we've just seen isn't just a technical issue on a difficult weekend. It's a reflection of something deeper. Max Verstappen, one of the most dominant drivers of the last decade, is facing a moment in which his trust in the car, the technical structure, and the team's management is being tested like never before. Max Verstappen's discontent isn't just a reaction to the car at Spa, It's a warning sign that could completely redefine his relationship with Red Bull. When a driver of his caliber, accustomed to dominating, begins to feel limited by technical performance, the consequences rarely remain mere words. And while he hasn't issued any direct threats, the simple fact that he has so clearly expressed his frustration indicates that something within the team needs to change, and fast. Red Bull, for its part, can no longer afford any more margin for error. Modern Formula One doesn't wait. Every technical decision that is delayed, every race that slips away, strengthens rivals and weakens the team's internal position. What happens in the coming weeks could mean the difference between keeping Verstappen within a winning structure or beginning to lose him emotionally. Because even though contracts are in years, the motivation of a driver like Max is measured race by race, corner by corner. And if that emotional bond with the car is broken, everything else quickly loses value. Verstappen's approach, his on-track sensations, and the RB21's performance at Spa make one thing very clear. The difference is no longer in tenths per lap, but in the team's ability to adapt to a schedule that offers no respite. Red Bull still has the talent, infrastructure, and resources to dominate again. But the question is no longer whether they have the means, but whether they have the time. And in a championship that is becoming more competitive every day, time is of the essence. That's why I want to know what you think. Do you think Red Bull will be able to regain its pace in the coming races, or are we facing the beginning of a new era with McLaren taking control? Should Verstappen continue to rely on his current team or start considering new horizons? Leave me your opinion in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel.